of it.
I had nothing to do with his death. He talks about Ronald Goldman. What does that tell us?
Well, again, when people say I had nothing to do with, that's not the same thing as saying I didn't do it or I didn't kill him. It's easier for a deceptive person to say I had nothing to do with than to say I didn't do it. Now, as I mentioned, people usually will not lie. And I believe that is a lie because I think he did kill Ron Goldman. So he's lying here. So if they do decide to lie, they'll soften the lie by saying I had nothing to do with, or I couldn't have done, or something like that. Because it's hard for them to say I didn't do it. That's a flat out lie in my mind. And so, yeah, the deception is there by saying, I had nothing to do with.
OJ's case that, we can look at, and in your book, there are plenty.
The biggest one is his note that he wrote, the letter he wrote and left at his residence that his friend Robert Kardashian read on national television.
I had nothing to do with Nicole's murder.
It was around the time of the slow speed Bronco chase. So everybody viewed it as a suicide note. He was suicidal in the Bronco, but not when he wrote the letter. It was a goodbye letter. But he started off, writing it to whom it may concern. First, everyone understand it had nothing to do with Nicole's murder. That's how Robert Kardashian read it on national television. It's not what OJ wrote. OJ crossed out the words I had. I mean, it's just, they're gone. But Kardashian inserted them in there. Well, why is that? Now, we can't ask him because he's deceased. But if you ask people, they'd say, well, and that's how it's always printed in magazines too, as well. And people would say, well, that's what OJ meant. OJ meant exactly what he wrote. Nobody's asking him questions. This is an open statement. He can write anything he wants. And what he wrote was, first, everyone understand, nothing to do with Nicole's murder. He took himself out of that denial. It's the missing I we talked about. He couldn't say, I had nothing to do with Nicole's murder. I mean, that's as blatant as it gets.
And another interesting thing you just brought up is that if we see something in the press, we cannot exactly be sure that that's exactly the words
right
that were there. And of course, we cannot, if someone crossed something out, you can see it if you see the statement handwritten, and that will raise a red flag for you. But if it's printed, of course, they're going to omit it, and we're never going to find out.
But I'll read a transcript, on the internet. Then I'll find the video, and I'll listen to the video and watch the transcript, and the transcript will not be accurate. They'll omit certain things. A lot of times, like a person may use an interjection like or ah, and they won't put that in the transcript. Well, those can be important. It's a stall tactic to think about what should I say. Even though it's just a second or two, it gives them time to hesitate and think. And again, if a statement's come from memory, it should be there, as they're telling. It should flow pretty smooth as they tell you, what happened.
Sure, you don't need to hesitate.
You don't need to hesitate. I mean, something happened 20 years ago, then yeah, you're gonna have to think a little bit about it. But yeah, so even like you point out, sometimes the transcripts are not completely accurate. And when it comes to statement analysis, yeah, we need to know everything that was said word for word.
This episode is fueled by Enigma Coffee, a ritual, a reminder, a first step in your daily routine towards a more realized, fulfilled, and happy life. Drink Enigma Coffee, expand, enjoy, evolve.
Another interesting case, Michael Jackson. And of course, Michael Jackson is also no longer with us. Of course, the relevance of somebody who's still alive and still can be prosecuted is different than if someone is deceased. But it's fascinating to me because it seems that people look at prominent figures a lot of the time, sort of less now with social media, but kind of like untouchable, and especially Michael Jackson. He became famous when there was no social media. So he was that era when you're kind of God if you are a movie star or if you are a music star. And people treat you differently, even if you do things allegedly
they do.
You're not supposed to. So that's an interesting case for that reason. So the answer asked him a question about sexual contact with a child.
Did you ever, as this young boy said you did you ever sexually engage, fondle, have sexual contact with this child or any other child?
Never, ever. I could never harm a child or anyone.
Never, ever. What does it tell us?
Well, again, as I mentioned, when the word never is used in a denial, it's a slightly weaker denial than to simply say, I didn't molest those boys. I didn't do it. He adds the word ever. I mean, never means not ever. So what he's saying is, I have not ever, so he's adding to it, trying to convince us that he would never do something like that. But the key is, he says, in this case, he says what he said, harm. In other statements, he would use the word hurt. I wouldn't hurt a child. I wouldn't harm a child. Well, everybody has their own personal dictionary. Certain words mean certain things to people. And to most people, when you think about the word hurt or harm, you think about a physical injury causing them pain. And yes, if you sexually molested somebody, that could still be viewed as, you harmed that child. But what's he thinking? That I didn't cause them any pain, or I didn't physically, punch them, hit them, whatever the case may be, as opposed to sexually molesting them.
Well, yeah, and to that point, the two guys from Finding Netherland that came out later, they even say in those interviews that at that time, we did not even view it as we view it as adults now, because we were children.
Right.
So, and one of them actually, interestingly he said, I only realized what actually happened when I had my daughter. And I looked at her and was kind of terrified that something like that can happen to her.
Mm-hmm.
So it only really hit him then. So, to your point, yeah, they might not even felt at that time that because grooming can be very elaborate.
Yeah, they felt they weren't being harmed. I don't recall him ever denying using the word, sexually molesting. It's always harm or hurt. And I think to him that's a truthful statement. I didn't hurt them. And then based on what you're saying here, their testimony is that they weren't hurt, back then, because they were just children, so they didn't know.
He says, I'm not even interested in that.
Not in my heart. It's not who I am. And it's not what I'm not even interested in that.
No one normal human being is interested in molesting a child.
Right.
I might be interested in this book or in this movie, but I'm not interested in molesting someone or killing something. That just doesn't sound right.
No, it doesn't. It has a meaning. There's a reason why they said that. There's a reason why they put this in their story. And as an investigator, your job is to find out why. Why did they include this information, or why did they say it, a certain way?
And then she asks,
and what do you think should be done to someone who does that? To someone who does that, what I think it should be done? I think they need help in some kind of way,
I think they need help in some kind of way,
Now, again, ask yourself how you would answer that question.
The word help is definitely not what I was thinking.
No.
They need to be put in jail.
They need to be put in jail.
They need to be punished.
And this is a question that sometimes
they might need to be treated if there is a psychological. I might get there at some point in my thinking. But help would definitely be not part of the first thing I say.
No, and this is a question that in some interviews are used towards the end of the interview to see how the person responds. And then they ask them, what do you think should be done to the person that took this money, whatever they're investigating? And a truthful person is usually going to say they should be locked up. A deceptive person might say, well, they should be given the opportunity to pay it back or something like that. So it gives you a little insight. And so that's what's going on here. But before he does that, I think based on how you read, he answered the question with a question.
With two
questions, which means it's a sensitive question and it's a stall tactic. And then his answers is a very poor answer. It's right. Most people are going to say that person needs to be locked up, or needs to face, you don't, maybe if it want to be that severe, still that person should be charged, arrested, or.
A person just answers they need help. Can it be ever a high level of compassion? Let's say, I'm thinking, a priest, Mother Teresa, I don't know. Would that be acceptable answer in that?
It would, initially would not be acceptable, but maybe that's why it's there. because that's their background, they would admit, well, yeah, they do need to go to jail or they need to face the consequences. But the first thing in their mind is, let's help this person. There are people out there that are like that. And maybe Mother Teresa or somebody like that. And so, yeah, I mean, we'd have to take that consideration, but we would see that as a red flag if somebody just said, oh, they need help or something similar to that, as opposed to being arrested, punished, or whatever.
What do you think? I don't know if you followed that. Erica Kirk, that big speech that she gave at the memorial where President Trump was, Tucker Carlson, a lot of people were there. And she's a Christian. I'm sort of setting up the stage. She says that young man, and we're not analyzing the word specifically right now because we don't have it in front of us, but she says something like, and that young man, I forgive him. So again, she's a Christian, but this kind of just happened. Her husband was just killed. Is it something, again, this is out of context, you don't see the transcript right now, but is it something that you would say, I want to look into that? That's a little too early.
She's not saying, I forgive him and let him go. He still needs to face the consequences, and I'm sure she'll be fully behind that, whatever the law allows. And there's some passing of time has gone by. It's not like if you immediately said that seems a little the same day or something like that her husband was killed. So time has gone by. But yeah, I think it's just the Christian thing to do, which is true.
It was powerful. It was definitely in the moment.
See, I always wrestle with that because God will forgive you if you ask for it.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd be the same way. If I was offended or hurt or whatever, if somebody asked for my forgiveness, yeah. But to just volunteer it without them asking for it, I don't know. That's what I always wrestle with. I mean, it's still the Christian thing to do, but if you think about God, that's the ultimate. Yeah, he'll forgive you, but you gotta ask for it. You gotta confess,
Right. Ramsey case.
JonBenet.
This one. Oh my God, what a case.
It is, yeah.
It's been so many years. When did it happen?
96.
96. And still people cannot put it to rest because, of course, the killer was not found. And also because they talk about new evidence, new DNA testing, possibly, that more information will be revealed or whatnot. So we already spoke about Patsy, the mother, referring to JonBenet as, I loved that child.
Yes.
When would it be an appropriate thing to say? It seems a little strange to me to hear that, but I'm trying to find a situation where you would say, no, that's legitimate.
I can't think of an example where it would be legitimate to refer to your own child that way. Somebody else's child.
Would it be legitimate to say this child in any situation referring to your own?
Well, this, yes, because this indicates closeness. My child indicates even more closeness, and that's absolutely the best way to phrase it. If you're referring to your own child, yeah.
Why would a mother, and you also brought up the Casey Anthony, why would a mother ever refer to her child as that child?
Well, it tells us she's creating distance. So why is a mother creating distance from her child? That's what we want to know. As an investigator, I'm trying to find out, why did you call her that child? Everything a person says has a meaning. And, some situations would be, one, if you caused her death, then maybe that's why you're creating that distance. If that child, depends on what the situation was, but caused you embarrassment, your family or something, then maybe you would create that distance. But it seems unacceptable, at this point.
Another very curious thing, on her grave, they put December 25th as the day that she died, even though she was discovered December 26th. And I'm assuming, they cannot tell exactly when she passed. Why would, and he gave a very, it just is a very strange answer. If the father asked why that's the case.
I think he was just saying Christmas. They're going to put a Christmas on there. Not that that sounds better. That's the wrong word to use, I guess. But and they were out that night, Christmas evening, came home, put her to bed. So it's still the 25th. But then, yeah, as you mentioned, we don't know exactly during the night, which will move into the 26th, when she was killed.